good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast. Lehr with me, your host, Imperial Dane, Master of Instruction. Off here to have a look at a fresh unit for us to look at, peruse at, and think about a bit. In this case, we are looking at the US Pathfinders available from the US Airborne Company. There's also a variant available through the Support Recon or Recon Support Company. We'll discuss them a bit later on. But overall, we'll be looking here at the Pathfinders, available at one command point for the US Airborne Doctrine, 290 manpower. We're looking at a 4-man unit with a mix of weapons, a mix of carbines, and a mix of M1 Garands with scopes on them. And then a bit of an interesting unit available here to the United States Armed Forces, a bit of a unique unit in several regards, partly in what they can actually do. In part, they serve as a reconnaissance unit, but in terms of also combat ability, they can actually support you. Because, amongst other things, they possess a rather unique ability which allows them, as an enemy unit goes down to a certain level amount of health, they actually have a chance of outright sniping them. So it might not work as fully as a sniper, you know, easily picking off an entire unit from far away, but again, in an firefight, where for example have them well positioned, they can all of a sudden cause your opponent to quickly lose men as they begin picking off any wounded soldiers. Which overall means this sort of thing that can quickly turn a fight in your advantage and quickly up the attrition versus your opponent. Which makes them, again, not something that necessarily can handle itself very well on its own, but supporting your infantry in a fight can grant you a lot of strength, a lot of firepower, and certainly also cost something to make an opponent's assault, for example, or the defense become very painful very quickly, as they quickly drain out any people. Also, it makes sure your troop opponent has less to actually heal up, which also means you have to spend more manpower. In that regard, they can actually give you a few advantages. And already here we're seeing our friend here, One Soma, already applying the next ability, which is available to them. Set up Beacon, which allows them to sort of reveal units on the minimap through this, making it a bit harder for the opponent to sneak up. That's one usage of it. It also possesses a few other abilities. For example, when you drop in paratroopers, normally you have sort of a large area where they can be scattered across, but this actually makes it safer for them to be sort of called in, which means you can call them in positions where you otherwise might not call them, thus giving you a bit more flexibility that way. And they also serve a third and also important thing. It actually allows your paratroopers to reinforce on the field. And remember, this thing costs absolutely nothing. So for absolutely nothing, you can reinforce your paratroopers, that is your elite infantry unit, on the field. Of course, it costs to reinforce them, but again, the means to do so costs nothing. Which, again, in that regard, actually makes the Pathfinders here a very, solid unit. Again, it's not a frontline infantry. Again, it's very much a support unit, but it's a support unit which pulls support in many regards, and certainly can also fight, but generally versus an infantry unit one-on-one, it's not going to fare so well. It's not going to have the firepower to sort of really put a stop to the Kraut's advances and plans. But again, supporting a fight, for example, in the building, they can actually be quite handy, providing you with a nice base of fire support to quickly snuff out some German lives. So if you can keep that in mind, for example, you'll generally find yourself doing a lot better and being a lot more happy with what they actually pull off. Because again, you're not going to be expecting, elite paratroopers, but again, something that can give you the edge in a fight, then cause your opponent to be a little less happy in a fight, and also overall support your endeavours through reconnaissance with the setup beacon, but again also allowing you to sort of further support any plans using paratroopers in the future. Again, by allowing them to be safely dropped in, but also reinforced on the battlefield, thus giving your paratroopers a lot more staying power on the front line, which is not something you'd otherwise necessarily always see. And that can also give you the hand in a prolonged firefight if you can keep reinforcing paratroopers without having to retreat them. So there are a lot of things there to keep in mind, and certainly it also makes it a bit of to a more smarter Axis player, a bit of a priority to actually get these bastards out of the way, or at least sort of try to somehow nullify their ability while in the fight. Otherwise, again, they will find themselves rapidly running out of men. Also noting in terms of veterans abilities, they overall sort of gain stat bonuses for all things, and in fact, as they reach high up, they actually become much more better in combat. They slowly become more accurate, for example, harder to kill, but if, for example, veterans 3, they actually gain more range, which also applies to the ability, which again means, oh hey, they can actually snipe away there with the marksman abilities from even further away. Which again extends the reach, and again their ability to base just drain your opponent of men. So overall, they can be a very powerful unit. Again, it's not something you'll see a lot of, and I think that's because a lot of players basically underestimate them. They might try and send them in like they're a bunch of, you know, elite troops capable of holding down half the German army on their own. They're not. Again, there's something there to give your riflemen the extra punch in a prolonged fight, to give you the extra ability to basically drain your opponent slowly of health, and again, also use those beacons. Proper usage of the beacons can give you also a good, strong hand in a fight.
Airdrop runs now available.
As you might be saying, again, they're not necessarily getting a lot of kills to direct engage, but again, as soon as someone sort of drops down a certain amount of health, all of a sudden those kills begin racking up. And all of a sudden, these Pathfinders all of a sudden begin to shine a bit more through. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, and I'm pretty sure you'll be quite happy with your Pathfinders, because generally when I use them, I generally find them to be quite helpful, and again sort of giving me the slight edges in fights here and there, and of course allowing me to get a lot more out of my paratroopers. So in that regard, they're a rather unique sort of support infantry unit that can actually do a lot for you as the game progresses, and proper usage of them will in fact give you quite the edge. So I think that rather covers the Pathfinders here. There's also a variant called the I&R Pathfinders, or Intelligence and Reconnaissance Pathfinders. They're not quite like these. They don't have the marksman ability, I believe. They're basically just sort of more for reconnaissance. They can still lay down beacons. What they do so instead have is the ability to call in a very nasty artillery strike for not that much munitions, I think a bit over 100. So, not quite as fully sort of support oriented, but they can still do something, but not quite as fully. They also have one squad member less, so keep that in mind. That doesn't mean they're useless, just not quite as, say, directly useful as the Pathfinders. Sort of a little addendum in that regard. Not much really sort of making a full video on the I&R Pathfinders for that. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. Hope you had a better idea sort of what the Pathfinders are capable of in a fight and getting the most out of them. If you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe. Share it with your friends so they might also be better knowledge in the fight. And otherwise, thank you all for watching. See you another time.